When Chappell Roan said motherhood was hell for her friends, ooh, she wasn't just making a statement, she was committing heresy against the carefully maintained political and urban fiction. So today on the Scenic Road, we kind of expose or try to put into words why we celebrate men who stay clear from parenthood while punishing women who dare to speak the truth, and how Tradwife fits into all of this. It will, trust me. Anyway, grab your beverage of choice and let's dive into what happens when women dare to drop the mask of maternal bliss and how that backlash isn't about protecting families. It's about protecting a profitable system built on women's silence. So, as a sociologist and feminist, I wasn't surprised at all when Chappell Roan on the recent episode of the podcast called Her Daddy said her friends with kids are in hell. I mean, yeah, I feel you. We feel you. And I also wasn't surprised by the fury that followed from conservatives. Because this is precisely what happens when a woman speaks too plainly about the realities of motherhood as she sees them. And while we don't interrogate the conditions making mothers suffer, we interrogate the women who dares to name them. Meanwhile, I think it was not that long ago um, when Seth Rogen said on a talk show that not having kids helped him succeed, and he and his wife clearly decided not, like, it was a very conscious decision not to have kids, which is very cool. You do you. Um, but he, like, the media narrative around this interview, like, he has been seen as like wise and grounded. And when we look at the narrative following Chappell Roan, when she says her observation that her friends with young children are exhausted and joyless, she's accused of kind of like being bitter, immature, anti-family, like, yeah, the whole shenanigans, right? And just this contrast alone kind of like tells us everything about what we value. It's not the honesty, it's the performance. So, and I feel it's really important to kind of like look into the distinction between motherhood as an experience versus an institution. Um, Adrienne Rich, in her book of Women Born, draws a distinction that remains quite essential: the difference between motherhood as experience and motherhood as institution. Motherhood as experience is real, contradictory, human, like precious, joyful, hard, flawed, right? It's all the things. It's full of long days and short years, and it's full of intimacy and loss and joy and rage and connection and disintegration and right. It's the lived reality of caring for children. It's messy and complex, deeply personal and wonderful. Yet, motherhood as institution is a culture and political script. It demands women's sacrifice, smile, and obedience. It clearly defines a good mother, air quotes, as one who's endlessly available, grateful, emotionally visible, and preferably with a good blow dry, right? Institution doesn't merely describe motherhood, it prescribes it, enforcing very narrow boundaries of acceptable maternal behavior, right? And don't you dare say you regret having kids. Like that's puts you right into Dante's whatever kind of ring of hell. So yeah, Chappell Roan kind of again was one of the recent examples that of people who broke the silence. And the backlash that followed wasn't about what she said, right? It was about what she kind of disrupted by speaking things out loud. And to look at the role of mother, I think it's really interesting to, and the role of a good mother, to look at Irving Goffman's theory of dramaturgy, right? We are all actors in our very own social performance, right? We go on stage and we perform. And motherhood in particular is a very, if not the most scrutinized role nowadays, right? The performance is very rigid. The good mother, as said, nurturing, calm, selfless, fulfilled, as said, preferably Becky with the good hair. And she must never appear overwhelmed or ambivalent or angry, God forbid. And to drop that mask while on stage, to admit that the role is crushing, is to invite condemnation. And this performance doesn't merely burden individual women, it also serves as a broader social function, right? While by keeping mothers focused on their personal adequacy rather than structural inadequacies, we prevent collective action that might demand better conditions for care work, right? Better conditions for childcare, better conditions to for like work and life balance. So Chappell, she reminded us that the stage is really a stage and a set, and that behind it, the actors, we women with kids, are often exhausted, unseen, and fucking unsupported. And for that, she was dragged. But it's very important to highlight that, again, this is all structural. Right? It's happened. This is what happens when society asks women to raise children without affordable childcare, paid leave, social support, or just general fucking rest. Right? I mean, yes, of course, we are unhappy. Maybe we're not unhappy like all day, every day, but we are unhappy, right? It's what happens when an entire economic system is propped up by the unpaid labor of mothers and then gaslights them into thinking that their exhaustion is a personal failure. They can fix it with, I don't know, whatever kind of weird relaxation candle Gwyneth Paltrow wants to push. So, I mean, some stats for you, right? According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, women spend 37% more time on unpaid household and care work than men. The economic value of this unpaid care work is estimated around 11 trillion globally. Yet, this number is it's invisible. It's nowhere in GDP calculations, policy considerations. It's just taken for granted. And Laurie Penny writes it very articulately in saying the unpaid invisible labor of women is what keeps the world turning. And it also keeps turning because we have been told to fucking smile through it and just shut up. Right? It's kind of like the chick song, like just shut up and sing, or just smile and sing. I never got the lyrics to that. Anyway, so and then interestingly, not interestingly, Seth Rogen isn't vilified for saying he doesn't want kids because our culture doesn't require men to anchor their identities in care work. We don't script masculinity around emotional labor or self sacrifice. So when a man chooses not to be a parent, it's autonomy, wise decision. When a woman critiques the system around motherhood, it's betrayal. Rogan is seen as practical, wise, smart. Rowan, ooh, dangerous, a threat. So, at the beginning, I promised you the Tradwives will fit into this, and they will. So, here we go. Um, right, it's this whole. It fits into this whole narrative of and this whole stage play of motherhood, right? The rise of the Tradwife movement from the last couple of years. Mm. A social media fueled return to traditional values where women embrace hyper domesticity, submission, and performative femininity. It isn't occurring in a political vacuum. Nothing is, right? It's directly connected to broader political currents that seek to redefine women's roles in increasingly restrictive ways. Um, this movement has gained momentum alongside the rise of right-wing populism globally. What began as an aesthetics nostalgia for 1950s vibes and lifestyles has evolved into a political stand that intertwines with conservative and nationalist agendas. The Tradwife ideal doesn't just romanticize motherhood, it actively promotes a return to patriarchal family structures where women's primary value is derived from their reproductive and domestic labor. The whole political dimensions become very clear when we examine who amplifies these messages. I mean, conservative media outlets, politicians promoting family values, and religious organizations. I mean, politicians who, I mean, themselves have like, I don't know, a gazillion kids by a gazillion different women. So, whatever, take that for whatever family value that is. I don't know. And like religious organizations fighting against reproductive rights and have all embraced the Tradwife aesthetic as a proof that women naturally desire traditional roles. And again, if this is on an individual level, if this is what you personally desire, yes, go do that. But be mindful of how this can be institutionalized. Anyway, the rhetoric around protecting the family, the core family, um, often translates to policies that restrict women's economic independence, reproductive autonomy, and political voice. And it's a word or a term that comes in a lot of conservative right wing parties, right? When we also think of the AfD in Germany. So, all of this is very evident in political campaigns that use motherhood as a moral credential, right? Female politicians are often required to perform perfect motherhood while simultaneously proving their professional competence. A double standard their male counterparts rarely face. I mean, would you imagine a female Elon Musk having, I don't know, a boatload of children by a boatload of different men? How this woman would be seen in society? And dare imagine this woman might be black, right? Just this makes it all just mind-boggling nonsense. So, meanwhile, like legislation that would actually support mothers, paid family leave, subsidized childcare, maternal health care, is frequently blocked by the same political forces celebrating the Tradwife ideal. So the whole Tradwife aesthetic packages the institution of motherhood in soft lighting, and curated table settings, and homemade butter churns, and all those. It doesn't fix the system, right? It just, I don't know. It paints it pink, and it doesn't sell support. It sells silence. And forget about the fact that a lot of these very popular tradwives are very wealthy women with very wealthy backgrounds. Side mark. So in states where reproductive rights are being rolled back, the Tradwife narrative serves a cultural reinforcement. Again, right? Suggesting that women's true fulfillment comes from embracing their biological air quotes destiny rather than fighting for bodily autonomy. And the political message becomes if motherhood is your highest calling, why would you need control over when and how you enter it? Just be happy that you do. Be grateful that you do. And I mean, also just the fact that they're excluding anyone who is biologically not able to become a mother. I, yeah, just another layer of nonsense. So, in this political context, Rowan's words, well, they're not just inconvenient for conservatives, they're unforgivable, right? Because she isn't romanticizing any of this. She's naming its cost. And that's your happiness. I mean, social psychologists could also explain this backlash through the lens of cognitive dissonance. And this is something why there was also a lot of backlash from individual mothers, right? Not just like from the media. When someone says something that threatens a belief we hold very close to us, really like an established assumption of who we are, like motherhood is the most fulfilling role a woman can have. If someone threatens that, we feel discomfort. And we do not like discomfort. So instead of confronting the belief and asking ourselves critically, why do we feel this discomfort? We rather lash out and attack. And studies show that we're particularly resistant to information that challenges beliefs tied to our identity or moral framework. And for many of us, rightly so, motherhood isn't just a role, right? It's more than that. It for a lot of us, it is a part of our identity, which is okay. Yet, if you put it in a religious and more cultural conservative background, it becomes more or less everything you are. And if that everything you are is being threatened, it puts you like in a corner, like a scary cat ready to lash out, right? So it's interesting that I always believe when you feel truly bothered by something someone says, you should look inwards, right? And if you felt anger, like when you heard Chappell on the podcast, and you felt angry or disappointed or mad, whatever, if your first reaction to her comment was anger, really ask yourself, okay, what version of motherhood are you protecting? Uh, Ask yourself who taught you that suffering in silence is noble, a noble cause? Who taught you that motherhood equals martyrdom? And ask yourself who benefits from you believing that? Ask yourself what political interests are served by keeping mothers isolated and focused on personal rather than structural solutions. Ask yourself what part of yourself is still waiting for permission to say, this is all fucking too much. Because, babes, believe me, the real betrayal here isn't Rowan's honesty. It's the culture around it that makes honesty feel like treason. So, and with that, I'm Jen, your Swiss sociologist and host of the Scenic podcast, a podcast for misfits, deep feelers, and those done pretending everything is fine. I talk about care, culture, social change, and the systems that shape us. If this resonates, I'm more than happy to welcome you again next week. Love us.